So when we think about, when Adam and I were children, and I would never, disrespect parents or teachers to the degree of the stories I've heard from other people of like where the kids are just like, fuck you, like
Yeah.
outright to the teacher, like send me to detention, like I don't care, like the consequences don't even matter, or the fear like isn't even there. And I've heard those stories across the board, right? In all different parts of the country. Um, and so I guess I'm just like we're just like posing the question. I'm like, is that the nature of what we want to see in our kids? And again, saying this as people who don't have children, but have definitely seen that there's been like an overcorrection, right, on this like the parenting spectrum of like, and like where's the balance, like, right, like we come back to
Hmm.
the word balance a lot, and it's like, okay, I don't think the past was great, right? Where there's like, like abuse and, all that stuff. I don't think the overcorrection where there's like no fear of parents. Like, I don't think that's the answer either, because then it's just respect is and of course, like you have to give respect to children as well. Like I believe that. Like I don't think growing up when I was a child, I don't think respect was given towards children, right? And so it's like I do think you need to give respect to children, right? Treat them as human beings as well in order to receive it. But it's also like there needs to be a little bit of I don't know, a healthy intimidation of like with like with like children, where it's like they know there's going to be consequences for their actions. Like I was afraid of like, my mom, freaking out, or my dad, or it's just like just because like I knew what the ramifications were, and that kind of kept me in check of like doing something awful to somebody, or and because I knew that there would be consequences. And I think when you take away those consequences from the children now, it just like leaves a weird pattern of behavior where it's just like they do not care. And then add in the phones and add in the technology to that element as well, where like the education levels, like the reading levels, the comprehension, like it's just like supposedly all that stuff is down as well.
Hmm.
So it's like not only are the kids like have no fear of consequences, they're also not even learning in these classrooms. And so yeah, man, a lot of opening thoughts there.
Hmm.
Um, I'd love to hear your take, just opening thoughts on what happened when we were kids, Adam, how it's
Yeah.
going today, the things we're seeing and hearing, and
Yeah.
yeah. What's going on,
Yeah.
bro?
It's interesting, and yeah, we don't want to generalize too much, but in the same time, for the direction of the conversation, throwing in some generalizations. We're just talking about some individual perspectives here, our subjective experiences. Because yeah, it's like it's interesting hearing that trend, observing that in public, even just being out in public spaces and seeing kids like really misbehaving, and the parents trying to do this gentle parenting and all that stuff, again, which is great, might be part of that, as you're saying, like too far of a pendulum swing going, an overcorrection. But and again, always knowing that it's anecdotal, it's subjective. We're seeing it through our lens. But I mean, I feel like I've observed the same thing. Like I remember being in elementary school, and there were like a couple of kids that were like that, like the really crazy misbehaved kids, like, where you're like, okay, they're probably coming from pretty traumatized homes, and they were kind of speaking to teachers like that. And like I remember this one kid in particular, this tiny little guy, when I was in like grade 4 or grade 5. He was like one of the smallest kids in the school, and he had like the biggest attitude and was like was so aggressively mean with the teachers, and it was kind of scary. It was one of those kids you're like, I wonder what he's doing now. But yes, generally seeing that seems to be more the case now, like this like lack of discipline, again, anecdotally, North America and like North American examples. But yeah, man, it's interesting because as you said, like the overcorrection, from the past generation, and I like your take coming from the Irish Catholic background. It sounds a little more extreme than mine, Like I think I was pretty well behaved when I was like before I was a teenager actually. So I I think I only got like physically reprimanded like once. My sister a lot more, but like I was still afraid though. I didn't really fear physical abuse from my parents, but I was still afraid to like disappoint them,
Yeah.
and I would never talk back really. And I didn't talk back to teachers really until a little bit later, but that was my personal experience. And for some reason I still had this real fear in me. And I guess it was like this fear of like being disowned, this fear of being like, left behind somewhere, given up for adoption or something. But it was like, not to like discuss those topics lightly, but that was kind of more the fear that I held when I was a little kid, like that my parents weren't going to want me anymore, and that kept me in line. And yeah, it's fascinating to see. You're in a mall, you're at a park, or like a really good example would be if you're ever, for some reason, in a theme park or something like that. I remember a few years ago, I happened to be in one, and I was like, "Wow, the crazy behavior that was going on was like it's fascinating. It's a fascinating thing to observe." And it's interesting. I think that something about it is like, the micro always reflects the macro, and we've got uh, arguably, or what a lot of people maybe see right now is like the breakdown of our society, which I personally agree with that perspective to a degree. Our capitalist, over consumerist culture, destroying the earth and each other. I feel like that's coming, like it's kind of in its late stages, that part of the cycle. So maybe the children that are like in large numbers saying, fuck this to their parents and to school are just a reflection of that. And they're a reflection of their parents' energy that are kind of, whether they're expressing it outwardly or if it's just kind of going on internally, like more subconsciously, expressing the energy of their parents who are kind of also saying, fuck this to our, to our inverted, very sick society that we have here. So, maybe it's that, and then at the other end, you also have these like incredibly aware children coming in who are like remembering remembering deep stuff and speaking about really deeply spiritual topics just as little guys. And it's like we still have that great polarity where, like I've seen some of those things online, these like very young kids who are sharing spiritual points of view. And, in those moments where I get sucked into that, it's like, wow, that's really amazing. Like humanity is really waking up. And then you go to the grocery store and see some kids doing like the polar opposite of that. Like, oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're still in it. We're still in it. It's like,
Yep.
it's always a balance, don't get attached too much to whatever you're seeing right in front of you. um, but yeah, I think it's fascinating. I like, as I remember a few kids, as I said, when I was like in elementary school, who clearly had no boundaries and no discipline at home, and would act out. But for the majority of them, it was pretty well behaved. I think. Like, I mean, I knew a lot of my friends were scared of their parents, like for being physically beaten, and I had a few friends whose parents would beat the shit out of them like quite regularly. So it is, on the other hand, nice to see less of that, I believe. And again, this is all also, remembering this is all like case dependent and kind of dependent on the demographics, right? Like socioeconomic and like and the resultant trauma that comes with that. Obviously, we're going to see more of that. So also, um taking into consideration that I think, at least for myself, I'm definitely a privileged take on my personal experience and what I observed around me, because it was pretty good overall. It wasn't like I grew up in a in a rough place or anything like that. And so, but still, observing those trends and observing those examples, it's been interesting. It was, yeah, I definitely had friends that were terrified of their parents. Like, it. Like you expressed like a little bit of fear toward your parents, but I'm sure, did you have buddies who were like really terrified of their parents, like getting beaten up
Yeah.
weekly?
Oh, yeah. I was afraid of my friends' parents
Yeah, yeah,
sometimes,
yeah, yeah, me too.
And,
Actually.
where I'm like, yeah, like, oh my god, I've had some of my friends' parents put the fear of God in me when I was a child.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, like, absolutely, like, there was fear not only from my own parents, but from, like, the other parents in my life,
Mm,
the other adults or, friends or aunts and uncles, what have you, right?
yeah.
Um, and, you know, do I think that was like, net positive, I guess? Like, probably, yeah. Like, is there pros and cons to it? Absolutely. But do I think that kind of, like, healthy respect and fear of consequences, right?
Yeah.
And, again, I'm not endorsing, like, beating the shit out of a child, but the the fear of, like, outburst or whatever, like, or, punishment and, in terms of, being grounded or like getting things taken away or like just
Yeah.
the fear of consequence was a real
Yeah.
thing that like, kept me in check. Even as, as a teenager, I'm causing chaos, in my own way, or trying to, um, and again, but like, no, the way I balanced it was like I knew where the line was, or like if I didn't know where the line was, I like edged it,
Yeah.
like close enough, and
Yeah.
like I didn't cross it, especially with teachers, bro. Like I was messing around in class, but I also like did okay, like did pretty good in school. So it wasn't like I was like fucking off on the academic side of it. So it's like, I don't know. With some things I could get away with because I was putting effort in other places, I think, and in retrospect. Whereas like, yeah, some of the kids, yeah, my experience as well, were just off the rails.
Yeah.
And from what I'm hearing now, it's like that percentage of like maybe it was one or two kids in a class that was off the rails. It's like the percentage of that has gone up that are
Okay.
just like, do not give a fuck,
Yeah.
like in class. And so it's like, I think from an educator's perspective, you could probably handle one or two of those kids, but like when it's like five or 10,
Mm,
that is way harder because you are outnumbered from the jump,
yeah.
as an adult trying to wrangle a class. And, you know, when yeah, man, my heart aches for educators because I've talked, like I've talked to educators, I've heard the stories
Hmm.
on top of the pay,
Yeah.
that they're not getting in the
Yeah.
States. On top of like the poor like financial system, financial situation that a lot of those teachers are going through, which just like minimal pay. Man, it just does not seem worth it. And I think there's a lot of burnout from what I've
Mm,
seen.
yeah.
And I don't know, brother. Like, I don't know. I don't know the answer. Again, we're not necessarily have the answers here, but just trying to pose the questions, right? Of like,
Absolutely. Yeah. As
something isn't going right.
yeah, and yeah, and also like also recognizing that it's like it's not necessarily going wrong or right. It's just going how it's going, and like it's part of, when we
Yeah.
step back and we can look at it, it's like just part of the collective evolution, and that we've all had some experience, whether it's in this incarnation or not. I mean, looking at ourselves as one being too, these are all aspects of ourselves experiencing things just a little bit differently. And reflecting upon our own experience too, because I was just kind of reminded, I just kind of remembered, I eventually did start, when I was a kid, I did start misbehaving. It was like after my dad left. And that's when it started to go a little more off the rails. And then I recognized too, now that there was like no discipline in the house at that point, that I did get worse without any discipline. Like I remember like being like a very young teenager and being brought home by a very nice police officer who didn't take me to jail but brought me home instead, and and uh and just like gave me over to my mom, and there after that there were no consequences. Like I didn't get grounded. I like nothing happened when I was just with my mom. It was like that there was never any discipline like that. So and I got worse through those years, where so it's like just adding a little anecdote to the importance of discipline, because again, like you're saying, it doesn't need to be physical. Kids don't need to be actually terrified of their parents themselves. They can just understand consequences in a healthy way. And, if that's not happening in large part, it may be due to the fact that uh, we are so collectively dysregulated and not in a state of inner peace that we can't maintain that consistency to deliver those consequences. Because again, a lot of this just like it's like, you got to be honest. Like, I mean, if I'm being honest, I should say, looking at like children, you're essentially training them, right? Like, and it's kind of the same as training a dog, and you have to be consistent. And we know like different reward schedules or whatever from psychology. You can look at what works and what doesn't. But essentially, like consistency is important for children's development, as far as I've seen. And yeah, just to lend some of my anecdotal experience, some of my observations when I've been around friends, family members who have kids, it's like, the punishment starts, like maybe the whatever, the toy is taken away, but then after enough complaining, the parents are worn thin to the point that they just give in and give it back and give a reward. And they're like, what does that kid learn? Well, like consequences aren't real. I can do whatever the fuck I want. And it makes sense that parents would not have the resiliency to maintain that consistency
Yeah, the
when they are
resolve,
so
yeah.
yeah, when they are so burnt out from this crazy sick society, right? So we just see how it all links together. And, in my opinion, always comes back, just like everything else, to working on oneself to be able to navigate this reality and every aspect of it as gracefully as possible. Because yeah, man, it's like if we don't, then and we're having kids, and you're like, if someone's choosing to have kids, then they're just passing that along, and they're the parenting model that they were given. If they haven't learned anything better, if they haven't worked on themselves, they're just going to unconsciously repeat that. And maybe it'll improve a little bit, as we see over time, like less physical abuse, for example, as you were talking about. But ultimately, we don't make like really big shifts. We just kind of do. We just kind of go back to the default setting, which is like, just what's imprinted in our nervous systems because of what happened to us as when we were kids. And then that, just gets passed along. So then again, that intergenerational trauma thing. So, um, as always, the answer to everything comes back to working on ourselves and learning how to love ourselves. But,
Yeah, bro.
yeah.
And it's not all bad, right? Like I saw somewhere where it's like millennial dads spend more times with their kids than, previous generations, which I'm
Yeah,
like,
I
that's
bet.
huge. Like that's a huge win, like that's
Mhm.
awesome. Like my dad was always at work, right?
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, which is just, yeah, part of the times, right? No ill will on him. Like he was supporting the family, to
Yeah,
the best of his
exactly.
ability. And so it's like it's cool that you see more millennial dads spending, being proactive and spending time with their children. Like I think that's a huge win. At the same time, you said something earlier that was making me think as well, where it's like, the indifference that children see are the indifference that children are reacting to the adults with. It's like
Mhm.
maybe that is a part of our karma. Because if a
Mm.
child is chronically online, which a lot of them are, and they have free reign of the internet, I
Yeah.
think a lot of them will come to the conclusion that it's a raw deal, like of just
Yeah.
of being in humanity. So it's like, why should I care about anything? Or why
Yeah.
should I take anything seriously? Because it's all just a fucking joke, And so it's like from the child's perspective, if I'm getting inundated with all that information and, the conclusion I come to is like, fuck it.
Mm.
Like, why do I care about anything? It's like, I understand that perspective too. And like I'm not saying it's necessarily good for anybody or good for humanity, but it's like I truly understand, that the teenage angst sort of thing of just like, why should I try or care about anything when any of the promises or subscribed the societal contracts have just been broken for the last 50 years. And get a job, work hard for what?
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
for what? To die and maybe have or maybe 5 years of retirement if I'm lucky when I'm 70, when they keep raising the retirement age. It's like I totally understand that perspective as well. And, again, the collective choice, the collective, decisions that we're making as a society, maybe that's the pushback from the child's end, where it's like, we've all worked so hard and subscribed to this system. Some of us are breaking out, right? Hopefully, I think there's a lot more people that are aware of the raw deal as adults. But if the children are coming into this world and kind of more acutely aware of it from the jump, like it took me like, I was in like my mid-20s, brother, until like I fully was like, I'm out. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I still have to play the game. But in terms of like subscribing to the script, I was
Yeah.
out, you
Yeah.
know? And so if kids are coming into this world, maybe like in their preteens or preteen age, and they're just like, and they're already at that point where it took me till I was like 25 to get to that point.
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe that's just the karma of like the society that we're in coming
Yeah.
back to us, because it's like it's just been proven that like, nothing cares about us, right? Societies, governments, nothing cares. Like, your community, like, is what you can lean upon.
Yeah.
No one's coming to save you other than yourselves and maybe, your neighbors and the people around you working together, but no one's coming to save you.
Mhm.
So, from that perspective, it's like I really understand where they're coming from. And maybe that's the reckoning, right? Of like,
Mhm.
we're gonna have a whole generation of disillusioned children coming into their 20s, and and then what? I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know. But maybe that's kind of like, not all bad, I guess.
Yeah, it what we choose to do with it and what they choose to do with it. So, but, for the purpose of our conversation, in order to lead by example, what we choose to do with it, because I mean, as far as I see with most people, and definitely with myself, this awakening path, this spiritual pursuit comes with a lot of stages of disillusionment, and kind of feeling like hitting rock bottom multiple times and going like, what is the point of all of this? But always coming back to finding at least finding a little bit of the centering energy, the pull from the heart, to come into that awareness that, yeah, as you're saying, it is up to us to create something new and to define ourselves, and to define ourselves in relation to the circumstances in which we find ourselves, which is our individual and collective karma. So yeah, it's interesting. Like the kids who are figuring that out early on, in many ways, we could look at that as a positive thing, that they're becoming disillusioned at a young age, as long as they find their way, which I think most of us do, because we're here. It's a good thing. It's like you said, figuring it out as a preteen rather than in mid 20s or like late 20s, early 30s for me. Um, it's it we can it depends, because nothing is, as we know, nothing is inherently good or bad. So we can choose how we want to see it too. We can choose to see the misbehaving of kids as like this problem that we can all sit around and complain about and be like, oh, it wasn't like that in my day. And but then it's like, what does that sound like? We've heard this before. We've heard our parents say that. We've heard our grandparents say that, and we see that we're still going in these loops, and that doesn't really work. So what if we just choose to see it as a positive thing? And if we choose that, then we're choosing the timeline in which it is a positive thing, seeing it as a step toward the next level of evolution, and seeing that the breakdown comes early in order for the rebuild to happen. And maybe it is a beautiful and positive thing.
Yeah. 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 Because like the rebellious child in me is kind of like, hell yeah, like punk rock.
Yeah.
Like um fuck school, fuck authority, like like fuck all of it, right? Like that's
Hmm.
like that, part of me has that inside of me too, right? um most of it's lying, most of it's a scam, right? People trying to make money, right?
Hmm.
You know you talk about before we hopped on, right, where it's just like, schools in many ways feels like a prison.
Hmm.
And the prison, the school to prison pipeline, right? Where it's just like you're already oh my God, indoctrinated into what that feels like. The
Yeah.
regimented schedule, the authority, bowing to the authority. Failure's a
Mhm.
bad thing. I mean, just my perspective on education, and I know a lot of educators agree with me, just like how doctors in the healthcare system don't agree with the insurance system, right? Like they're a
Yeah.
part of the system, but they're aware of its flaws, right? I know
Yeah.
a lot of educators would change the curriculum if they had the ability to do so. They don't. So it's like I get people are fixed in the system,
Mhm.
regardless, right? Um, but when it comes to, yeah, this indoctrination of that we have of our children, that's a very real thing, right? When I think back of the history textbooks that I was given and like how propagandized that version of history was,
Yeah.
when when in reality it was way much more violent. We were the bad guys
Yep.
in a lot of ways, and imperialists or, colonizers, when it
Yeah.
comes to Vietnam or Hawaii even, or
Yeah.
any of these places where we just came in and and planted our flag and said this is ours, even though there were people already there. I mean,
Mhm.
friggin', North America, right?
Yeah.
The indigenous population's there, bro.
Yeah.
And so
Very
it's just
much.
like, but I mean, any empire in history, right? Like we're just the latest one. It's like it's just the story of humanity thus far, right?
Mhm.
Um, so I recognize that, like, the stories that we're told, even in school, a large part are wrong, right? Like they're lies, or not the whole truth. Maybe there's sprinkles of truth in there,
Yeah.
but it's not the whole truth of like what actually happened. And so, yeah, like I said, like the rebel in me, like I'm like, I get it from the or from those children's perspective, where it's like, why the fuck should I listen to any of this?
Yeah.
And but at the same time, I'm like, learning is awesome, and like to be curious is awesome, and like, I know that like reading comprehensions down, so it's just like I don't love that, y'all.
Yeah.
Like I get like the rebellious spirit, but it's like I also know how to read, and
Yeah.
like and understand what you're reading as well. So again,
Yeah.
it's like that balance, right? Of just like some of that disillusionment I think is really good, but then like if you're so disillusioned to the point that you're not even trying to learn how to read and write or truly comprehend a book that you're reading, I'm like, that's too far, right? We talk about the
Mhm.
pendulum swinging. I'm like, that's too much disillusion of like, you have no desire to um learn anything, like even in the context
Mhm.
of school, which I get, like, like I just talked about is short-sighted in a lot of ways, the
Yeah.
curriculum. But yeah, bro.
Yeah. Well, it's like, is it rebellion? Is it just unbridled rebellion, or is it rebellion with a purpose? Is there some centeredness in there? Is there a vision forward, or is it just yeah, rebellion without a purpose is just like, I don't know, anarchist, and just self-destructive and kind of masochistic, really, ultimately, I think. So it's like seeing something wrong with a system and not just being like, let's just, give up on all of it, but rather maybe using that as a motivation to create a new system. And in our globally, homogenized experience here, it's kind of that can seem daunting, but ultimately, when we understand a deeper spiritual connection, and that all fear is false energy appearing real, and that, even the fear of death doesn't have a hold over us, then maybe that can give us the motivation, the clarity, and the purpose to create something new, create new systems. Maybe this is people living off grid and little communes like they did a lot in the 60s and 70s, but doing the work on themselves to actually have that kind of thing work, rather than everyone just bringing their distorted sexual energy and letting those those little societies and communes crumble. Um, so yeah, I think it comes like, at least as far as I see it, it's like comes down to, yeah, like it's great to have that rebellious spirit, but have a direction for it. If the system isn't working, then create a new system. And this is what we've always done. And we've just been so saturated with the programming of recent years because it's come along with technology where it's just always, televisions and smartphones. It's hard. It can be a little bit more difficult perhaps to remember that we are capable of doing that, that we are sovereign beings, that we are intelligent little reflections of God, each perfect little snowflake, individual snowflakes that can change things up with the power of our consciousness, which is like I truly believe. So, um, yeah, just reminding each other, reminding ourselves that we are powerful, and if the system isn't working, then we create a new system, and more people will be on board with it, I believe, than one might initially think, because if we are moving again into that rebellious awareness or direction with a centered consciousness in our heart space, then it's moving in the direction that we naturally all do want to go. You know, putting aside the belief that humans are inherently bad, that like this fear paradigm that we live in uh, is just how it is, original sin, all that kind of stuff, like throwing that garbage out, recognizing that as yesterday's garbage and moving into the space of a deeper awareness of our heart-centeredness, our Christ consciousness that we that we truly are. I think that once that just, that little trickle starts, then it's quickly followed by like a tidal wave or a dam burst, whatever you want to say, like a massive flood of expanding consciousness. And that's what I really believe we're moving toward, and that's what I'm choosing. That's why it's a good thing to talk about. Um, Making it real. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. And
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And before we hopped on y'all too, Adam was talking about a friend of his experience in when it comes to like school lunches, right? And like how a lot of
Mm,
people to a benefit, again, to the benefit of the school system, even though I know some people are trying to gut this as well, was like free lunch programs, right? And feeding children. And um I think that's awesome, right? Like that's like a valid use of tax dollars, right? Is feeding kids, even though some people are gonna be like, why the fuck should I feed those kids? I don't even have kids.
mm.
Well, it's empathy, y'all. I don't know how to teach you empathy. Like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Like, if you just don't, if you want kids to be, if you want kids to be hungry, I don't know what to say to you,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Yeah.
you don't have a heart. Um, but so when it comes to, like Jesus Christ, yo.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
But when it comes to the things we should be doing, and the idolized version of the communes and stuff, it's like we can't eat money, we can't eat 401ks or retirement plans, but it's like um something that I think is valid that we should be doing is planting. They even during World War II, like the government was really um telling the American civilization to, plant victory gardens and, have
Yeah,
a
yeah.
have a source of food from your own backyard, which and like they taught people how to do it, like, in a, 15 by 15 plot of land, we could have a ton of groceries.
Mhm,
And, I think that's a noble pursuit as well when it comes to like we can't feed the kids as it is, right? For a
mhm,
lot of these times, right? And you said when the kids went away for summer break, like they would come back like malnourished, and so like the school started feeding the kids during the summer too. And if food is an issue, especially when it comes to children, like I don't want to see any child starving. It's like I think we need to be really conscious of the systems of food that we create,
mhm.
and everyone can do their part. Adam's like, oh, what do we do? Like, how do we change things? It's like a small garden is huge, like maybe a little tiny greenhouse where you can like have some fresh greens all year. That's huge. Like, and it's like, oh, I don't have the land or the house to do that. It's like I understand that as well, but there's the herb towers, or there's little
Yeah,
stuff you can
hydroponic
do even if you're in
gardens.
an apartment or something.
Yeah.
Hydroponic gardens, like there's stuff you can do, throw some wildflower seeds, around you, right? And
Support those
make some tea
pollinators.
with some of the cool stuff. Yeah, support the pollinators, dude. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was talking to a beekeeper the other day, which was sad. Yeah, because he was saying all the pesticide and stuff that, just like destroy the hives, right? I think he was saying
Mm,
glyphosate and
mm.
all that stuff, which is
Glyphosate.
also causing gluten intolerant. Yeah, which
Mhm.
is also causing gluten um allergies amongst humans. So it's like it's not only affecting the bees, y'all, it's affecting us as well.
Yeah.
But I'm going on a tangent here. Food.
No, I love it. I love
Yeah,
that our
good food for our
conversation goes
kids,
there. Yeah.
Yeah, but food, not only for the kids, for us as well, good food. It's like planting fruit trees, but it's like doing that now because if the system is collapsing, um, as a, we're seeing the cracks and like you're seeing people struggle, like, if it's really going down that path, I don't want people to go hungry. So it's like while things are still like not at that level of desperation yet, it's like we should be building these systems
Yeah.
now. And so if you have the ability to, do any of that stuff when it comes to having some forethought when it comes to our food and not just don't take the grocery stores for granted, y'all. Like it's like
Mm.
those are miracles of
Yeah.
modern convenience, and they might not always, be fully stocked. We've seen that. You've seen it during COVID. I remember, going
Yeah.
to grocery stores that were fully empty,
Yeah.
right? And so it's like we take that for granted, like we really do. So it's just like, have some things going to to support that. God forbid, the shelves aren't stocked like we saw
Yeah.
during COVID.
Yeah. Yeah, man, I love it. We're talking about replacing systems in order to, based on the breakdown that we see and how the kids are a reflection of that. And it's like, yeah, what do we do? That's an extremely important consideration. Teach kids how to garden. We're talking about like giving some direction and building motivation. Like let these little beings that come from this planet put their bare feet and bare hands in the dirt and get connected with it. Because I bet you that will. I would put a lot of money on that would solve a lot of problems in terms of like inner peace, regulation, however you want to say it. Um, yeah, we are our bodies are a product of this earth, and we get to reconnect with it. It only brings positive. It's all beneficial. So that would be cool. That's yeah, and we see that kind of thing, right? Like community gardens and getting kids involved in with it, like just kind of reaching our own kind of realization or conclusion on that based on this conversation. It's like I really see a lot of uh a lot of power in that, and a lot of I really think it's a valid pursuit. So that's cool, man. I'm into it though. I'm into the growing food. That's the next stage.
I don't want people to underestimate how important that is,
Yeah.
especially as we see again hungry kids in this country.
Hmm.
And you question. It's like why can't parks have fruit trees? Why can't apple trees be in the parks just for free?
Yeah,
Like
like they
why?
do in
Like why?
Mexico.
What? And it's just like yeah, because it's like you can't make money off of them. Like it's like
Exactly.
because people eating, people not buying their food is that's so terrible.
Yeah.
That people can have some food for fucking free,
Yeah.
like as it should be, right? Like as the earth provides, so
Yeah.
food by and large should be free, right? Like, if it has been free in historical context, like when we were
It
hunting and foraging, as ancient humans,
yeah.
it was free. Like
I
there was
mean,
no monetary system,
yeah, it
and
is
so it's
free. It
like,
was placed here
go for it.
for us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's like because we can't profit off of food, it's like we have to criminalize it.
Yeah.
Um is just insane to me. Like that's just like it's just an insane way of thinking. And so then what? Like you have people going hungry. Um which is nuts. Which is
Yeah.
nuts. Like it should not be. That is so backwards to my train of thinking, and so
Exactly.
yeah, if you have the ability to, get some free food, on your property or whatever. I know, people with mango trees or lemon trees. I had an apple tree and one of the places I was staying at. And it was too many apples for me, dude. Like I was like giving them away to neighbors and like,
Yeah.
giving them away to friends and these
Yeah.
these amazing like yellow delicious apples. I was like, I can't eat all these, and so you
Cool.
give them away to friends and give them away to, come pick a bunch of apples. It's just like and that's beautiful, right? Like, you know, to share that abundance with your friends and with your neighbors. It's like, I don't need all of this, you know, it's on the land that I'm currently renting,
Yeah.
but, you know, I don't need any. And then who gave me that gift, right? Like that person that was living in that house, because this was a full-blown apple tree. Like whoever planted that tree, you know,
Mhm.
30, 40 years ago, gave me such a gift, right? Through
Yeah.
time. Like they were feeding me through time. And
Yeah.
you know, and I always thought about that yard because that yard was so
Boom.
beautiful. Like someone really just gave me a gift through time because they like like they had these perennial flowers, and they had this big beautiful tree in the middle of the yard that was like this big umbrella for this whole yard, and they had an apple tree behind that, and like, oh man, like this person just gave me such a gift through time, through the land, you know. And it's just like, and that made me think a lot of just like to be able to do that for other children, right, to the future generations. And you know, and food, man. Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about food, you know, and especially
Yeah.
if the kids are starving, you know, if they're not fully fed.
Yeah, and we gotta take care of everyone because everyone is us. We when we zoom it in and we change our definition of self, and we understand it's deeper than like this small ego self. We understand it's that which is the same with everyone, connected with God. Then selfish isn't a bad word. And when we understand the truth of reincarnation, you could look at it from the perspective that that was another version of you that planted that tree in order to feed yourself in the future, you know, in a different body. And sharing, like, reciprocity is absolutely what we have to return to in order to awaken out of this fear, this dream of fear, this nightmare that we're currently existing in. Because yeah, understanding, like, when you have an abundance, then share with your neighbors, even when you don't have an abundance, you know, share, because hoarding it for yourself isn't actually helping you. Um, Getting into that flow of reciprocity of like, yeah, you got some, especially when you got like some extra apples, yeah, give it to the neighbors, you know, hook up the neighbors, because you're helping yourself. It's just the same as, and then when we extend that further, it's like,
Yeah,
don't cut down the tree because you're also cutting down a part of yourself. You know, it's not just other humans. We're not in a totally like holistic system here where we're all connected. And this is the thing, we're moving to this, back to this awareness that our indigenous brothers and sisters have held for so long, and then held on to it despite all of the madness, and that you know, the colonizer mindset has inflicted on them and all of us, you know, ourselves as well. Moving back into the space of awareness that we are all connected, and that yeah, taking care of the land, taking care of the kids, you know, being in favor of that free lunch program is helping yourself too. That is being selfish. Helping others is being selfish when we're expanding the definition of self. So it's not even a stretch to grasp it once we just expand that definition of self and understand that we're all one here. And if somebody's going hungry, that means we're all going hungry. If somebody's behaving in a greedy way, that means you know, we're we're all we're all collectively kind of a part of that. We're all expressing that. So doing our best to dispel that energy. And again, you know, it always comes back to, what are those actionable steps? Well, it's like we can only focus on ourselves. You know, if we want the garden, if we want the land to be plentiful, then, you know, plant our own garden. You know, if we want to if we want to see greed stamped out, then we got to be generous in whatever way that we can and start moving in that direction. And it's happening. And also see that the tide's already pulling us that way. So it's just something we just gotta relax into and trust and surrender.
folks, if you like what you heard on episode 36 of Oneself, please support us in all the ways that are free. You know, like, comment, subscribe, share with friends or family. Um, we really appreciate it. And yeah, man, yeah, I know we covered kind of a lot of ground. You know, maybe I went on a tangent a little bit there. You know,
I
going
love
from
that.
you know, just the dynamics of education, feeding everyone, but it's all interconnected. Yeah, like Adam was saying, like, if we expand the definition of what an individual is and realize that there is no separation, that's just an illusion. We're all each other, you know. Um, then things start to seem way more connected than previously thought, and
Mhm.
our actions, big and small, impact everyone. So hopefully we're trying to help, not hurt, right? Trying to help each other, not hurt. And the other things we talked about, little ways, something that everyone can do, right? It's like you don't have to change the whole world, just your corner. And if everyone's doing that, the whole world changes, right?
Mhm.
So yeah, Adam, any closing thoughts on episode 36? Um, otherwise, we'll see y'all next week.
Yeah, man, I think it's good. I like where we left it.
Cool. All right, we'll see you next week, y'all.
See ya.